video, and this time not with COVID, so that's a good thing. Today we're going to talk about what I think moving forward is going to be best side deck or main deck options, depending on how the format moves out. This is arguably my favorite time of the Yu-Gi-Oh season, which is when the format is really fresh, right off of Chris' ban list. Between 2 to 4 weeks after a list drops is when myself personally, I enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh the most, because everything is basically, for the most part, broad, and there's a lot of different decks moving around. A lot of people trying to figure out what's the next best deck, what's going to be the next best deck to top the best deck, if we have a general idea, which in this case we normally do, one being Brave Phantom Knights and Sword Soul, etc., etc. So what we're going to talk about today is a lot of it's going to be standard for the most part, as some of y'all is going to already know, but this is mainly for the people who's basically stepping back into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, if they are stepping back, because I have had a lot of people that are new to this game or returning members that just want to get pushed back into the game, and that's what I'm going to do for you. So if you don't have these cards, you might want to pick them up. If you do have them, you might want to look forward to putting them into your side deck or your main deck, depending on what deck suits you and if you can run them. But some of these, they're not in any order. I just want to go ahead and say that. They're not in any order. But if they are important ones, I'll make sure I tell you when they are, or which ones are important, which one's a tech option, which ones are very situational, etc., etc. But starting it off, the first card is going to be Alpha, the Master of Beasts. This card is a very good card that people sleep on all the time. He has the effect that reads as follows. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must first be special summoned from your hand while the total of attack of all monsters your opponent controls is more than all of the monsters you control. You can target any number of beast warrior and or winged beast monsters you control, return them to the hand, then return face-up monsters your opponent controls to the hand equal to the number of cards returned to the hand. Also, for the rest of this turn, Alpha the Master of Beast you control cannot attack directly. You can only use the effect of Alpha the Master of Beast once per turn. So, some people are going to be like, well, if we don't have any Beast or Beast Warriors? Alpha is a beast. He counts as himself. So he's basically like Pankratops, if you know what Pankratops is. A lot of people know what this card is, so kind of referencing it towards that. So basically, if you have this card in hand and you're going second, you can special summon him. It's an inherent summon, so it doesn't start chaining nothing. So you can just enter battle phase, you can attack over or crash with one of their problematic monsters before they even negate stuff. Or if it is a less attack than your card, then you can attack it and then go to main phase 2 and then bait another negate by trying to bounce it and another card. So it can get rid of 2 for the price of 1, basically. So, and if you are running a deck like Tri Brigades, Luna Lights, or any decks like that, you could potentially get 2 or 3 more bodies on board before your normal summon, and then use Alpha to return himself, plus your other 2 cards to potentially bounce 3 cards total. That's really busted. That's another reason why this card is very slept on, in my personal opinion, as just a really good generic side deck option. So, moving on to the next card is Pankratops. Pankratops is one of those cards that usually since it's at 1, it's usually a side deck option because he can get rid of floodgates, he can do all kinds of shenanigans. He's normally not really seen in the main deck unless you're running a hard go second deck. So, but Pankratops is one of those cards where he is somewhat like Alpha, but instead of being attack, it's monsters. So if your opponent controls more monsters than you, you can special summon him and tribute him to pop a card on the field, which is really nice when you're trying to bait out negates or just get rid of floodgates or get rid of negates themselves, or you're just trying to have an extra extender with a body on board that is a quick effect. You can do it on your turn or your opponent's turn to pop a card. So not much explanation needs to be said there. So, but moving on to my personal opinion, which is one of the best hand traps, I think, of moving forward in this format, which is one of 2, and that being Artifact Lancia. Artifact Lancia is going to play a big part in this format. I'm not, depending on how the format rolls out and flows, will depict on whether or not I feel that it needs to be main decked. That is to be determined, and I'll let you know further on down the road, later on in like future deck profiles or videos or anything like that, if I feel it needs to be main decked, depending how far the Brave PK goes, honestly. But basically, it's a hand trap that you can just discard from your hand during either player's turn, and you or your opponent's locked out from banishment. Which against PK, that's a serious like issue for them. Even though they can still have the Brave Engine stuff, but it locks down their whole deck, and that deck has potential to be the best deck of the format, so you always want to be prepared for it. Not much explanation needs to be said on that, because you could also set it, but I wouldn't recommend setting it, because then you have to find a way to pop it or have them pop it. You just hold it in hand, just discard it, and call it a day. Moving on to my personal opinion, outside of Lancia, which is going to be the second to not first best hand trap this format, and that is Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, granted, it does not negate the effect from resolving, but it gets rid of board presence, and in some of decks, board presence is key. Like, for an example, it also doesn't also work on, it doesn't also only work on monsters, it also can work on face-up spell or traps that are already on the field, aka Brave tokens. So, I'll go ahead and read you her effect if you have not read it or you need a refreshment on it. So it says, when a monster on the field activates effect, or when a spell or trap card that is already face up on the field activates effect, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard. Destroy that card on the field. You can only use the effect of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit once per turn. So let me like just highlight the fact that it says on the field. So if you don't know, Ghost Ogre is a level 3 light monster that is a psychic tuner. What card did we just get back to 3? Emergency Teleport. If you have access to be able to run E-Tele and utilize it at its full potential, like if you are Virtual World, for an example, or other decks that may be psychic or something, like if you're running pure Psyframes or something like that, this might be a good card for you too. Outside of the fact that it's a tuner, you can get instant access to Haki Fibrax, you can synchro with it, you have E-Tele to your disposal, you can use whatever you want, because let's say for an example, you go full combo, but you held your Emergency Teleport. You can use Emergency Teleport at the end of your combo, special summon Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and sit on it as an additional interruption on your opponent's turn. See what I'm saying? It's really good in that regard, because you just tribute it off and go on by your day. Against decks like PK Brave, anything that uses the Brave Engine, this card is going to be busted. This card is going to be really good against Sword Soul, and it's very situational. It could be somewhat decent against Virtual World too, but very situational on that one, in my personal opinion. But the big two hitters, it helps you with those two big hitters, which is not Virtual World, but Sword Soul and PK, mainly because of the Brave Engine stuff. But it could also help out too against it's the worst card you have and they have Rusty or something. At least you'll get rid of their board presence, because a lot of the decks that are the top heavy decks can't really do nothing without board presence, if that makes sense, because they need it to progress with their combo. So yes, Ghost Ogre, in my personal opinion, is going to be the best hand trap outside of Lancia moving forward. So those are the top two you want to make sure you have in your main deck or your side deck. Generally speaking, you would probably want Ogre in the main and Lancia in the side. It'd be kind of silly to side deck Ogre and main deck Lancia unless you're main decking both of them, in my personal opinion. There's more utility out of Ogre being in the main than Lancia being in the main. So, but moving on to this next one, this next hand trap is one that I've seen, my personal opinion, could have its way in the format and be very good in the format, but is also very situational at times too, because it's restrictions. And that is a hand trap called No Material. No Material is a very busted hand trap, and if you see it going second, it is a really generic hand trap that just shuts down everything. It could shut down literally every deck in this format. If you don't know what its effect is, or you need a refreshment on its effect, let me read it to you real quick. No materials effect says if your opponent special summons a monster while you control no cards, you can discard this card, target one face-up monster your opponent controls this turn. That monster cannot be tributed or used as material for a fusion, synchro, XZ, or link summon. So, now let me go to the drawbacks of this card before I get into the positive aspect of the cards. First, you have to wait for your opponent to special summon a monster, which to a degree can be a positive thing with it being a drawback at the same time, because it'd be negative because you have to wait on your opponent to summon something, but that's usually not that bad of a drawback because a lot of the decks nowadays like swarm the field anyways. Which the positive aspect of it is it can help you play around Gamma, because you couldn't activate this card and then you can shotgun it and then they just hit you with Gamma. So, and to a degree, depending on how you look at it, it can kind of be a positive plus a little negative at the standpoint on that too. Let me get you to the second part of this card that's kind of has some serious drawbacks, which my personal opinion is why I think is the main reason why no one really plays it, which also leads it into the most situational part of the card. It says while you control no cards, so you can't control spells, traps, monsters, anything. You can't control anything in order to activate this card. So this card really is a solid, hard go second card. But if you resolve it, it can literally shut your opponent basically down unless they're playing like pendulums or something and they just completely can just swarm. But if you're going second, you hit Sword Soul with this, indirectly, they could, if they have a proper hand, yes, they can still extend, but they're not making one of their synchros. So basically, if you, I'm pretty sure it's the Long Young, I'm pretty sure the one it is, you can hit it, you don't have to worry about Baron. If you hit Moye, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have to worry about Shishao. So if I didn't butcher those names, I'm sorry, just let me know in the comment section nicely. But no, if you hit those, you can pick and choose which one you want to hit, and so the ones you wouldn't have to worry about. You hit Virtual World, you can slow them down significantly. Yes, they can still spam because that's what that deck does. It's a really good deck, a really good and slept on deck in my personal opinion, and it's going to be one of like probably the top 4 decks, top 5 decks of this format probably. You can use it against PK, and they can have a serious, like a rough time. Like if you wanted to wait for them to bring out like the Cheerbeanie or something, and you drop no material on them on their Cheerbeanie, yeah, you waited for them to take up their link zone, and you hit them with the no material. Yeah, that's really good. A really good interaction for you, for an example, not for them. But if they had like, I don't really know how they would play out of that. My personal opinion. Unless they went Brave combo before, then obviously that would be a lot different of a situation. But yeah, no material is a really busted card that could find itself in any format, in my personal opinion, and is a very good side deck option. If you don't see it, then it can be a dead card in deck. I understand that, but my personal opinion, I like the card. If I see it, I see it. If I don't, I don't. So what? Because I don't think it's going to break your deck just for having 2 of them in there or 3 of them in there or whatever, and you don't see them. So, but no material is a really good card. You should give it a check it out. Moving on to the next one is Droll and Lockbird. Droll and Lockbird, I feel, is still a very mandatory card for your side deck. Now, I think it kind of took a seat back, like it took a back seat, like when Bird Up kind of really got hit. The Bird Up, by the way, is still a really good deck. I still think you should be on the lookout for it, but that was the main deck that the interaction we wanted to slow down and slow that deck down. But it is still a very good rogue answer to answer rogue, and like Flunder, you could hit Flunder and it would really slow them down, along with Lancia, by the way. Granted, Flunder could still play through Lancia, it's just they wouldn't get none of their follow-ups, which is still really good. Which brings me to another thing. If you guys want to see me do a video on how to build a side deck, whether it being for this format or another format, and just how I personally build side decks, let me know in the comment section below. I can make that happen for you guys. And kind of how I did my Galaxy Eyes video, where I said how to probably construct a Galaxy Eyes, I can do that for a side deck that can kind of work for almost any deck for that regard. I can break it down how myself personally would attack the situation and how to properly build a side deck. Not saying it'll be the greatest, but I'm just saying it's how myself personally, and you could take and do with it as you please. But moving on to the next hand trap, we have Effect Veiler. Effect Veiler is another one like Drone Lockbird I feel kind of took a back seat in this format, only because other hand traps like Ogre and Lancia and stuff kind of became more necessary. Effect Veiler is still a very good card that you kind of need this format but don't need, but a lot of decks kind of found a way to play around it. So what I mean by that is it's a lot of things activate on the field, so that monster wise, so you could still really need and utilize Effect Veiler to help slow those cards down. But like I said, a lot of the top heavy decks like Sword Soul and a couple of other decks, they found their way to play around it / play through it. So basically what you do with that is you find a way to play around the way they play around it, which is kind of why I said Effect Veiler kind of took a back seat in that regard. But it's still a very good card and one I would consider main decking in certain decks if you had the space. Moving on to our next card. Our next card is arguably probably outside of Ogre and Lancia the best card that you could either main or side. And it's probably finding itself to potentially be necessary to be mained for multiple reasons that I'll explain here in a second. And that card is Cosmic Cyclone. Cosmic Cyclone is probably going to be the most important card moving forward in this format if Konami doesn't give us an E-ban list or anything like that, because of the Scythe lock and everything that most decks can do now since they didn't touch the Scythe package on the ban list. Cosmic Cyclone, pay 1,000 life points, banish one spell or trap. Basically. So it helps you get rid of that annoyance of having to deal with the Scythe and all that. So basically, you can banish your own stuff. Fun fact. So if you needed to, like since it's a quick play, you can use it and play around certain interactions if you're needing your certain cards to resolve and stuff like that. So that's another good reason too. On top of that, skill drains at 3. So between skill drain, Scythe, Eldritch is a very potent deck and is probably going to climb the ladder as we move forward. I don't think it's going to get too crazy, but you want to be able to banish the Eldritch engine and not give them the follow-ups and resources that they need to just keep resetting the field, because that's what Eldritch does best. It does amazing at recycle and just staying in the game, as where Cosmic Cyclone can somewhat take care of that. On top of that, sadly, Mystic Mind did not get touched on the ban list, so we want to take care of those problematic cards as well. So Cosmic Cyclone is going to find itself in the format to potentially be the most important card in your main or in your side deck, and you should most definitely have a copy. There's a lot. They're fairly cheap. The commons are, I don't even know. I don't even want to say a price because the Yu-Gi-Oh market fluctuates so much. It could even go up for all I know, and could potentially not even be a budget option. But I don't think that's going to happen. But Yu-Gi-Oh players will be Yu-Gi-Oh players. Moving on to another important one to go in the same category as Ogre, Lancia, and Cosmic, and that is Forbidden Droplets. Forbidden Droplets, I understand, is not a budget option, but if you have the dough and you have the means to buy the card, buy this card in multiples. It is necessary because if you don't see the cards like Cosmic Cyclone and stuff like that to stop the Scythe package or anything for that matter to slow down your opponent and help you break their board, Droplet is very necessary because it gives you a situation to where it's a quick play. On top of that, they can't respond to it with whatever you send for its cost. So if you Droplet and you send a Monster Spell and Trap, they can't respond to it at all, and you get to negate 3 things. Plus, like I said before, it's a quick play, and it gives you basically any free reign to activate it whenever you want, as long as you had it set, or on your opponent's turn, or you have it in hand when it's your turn to activate something. So, Droplet is a very good card, and it is a very necessary card and a meta call to be moving forward, in my personal opinion. Now, with that being said, the budgetary option is what I want to talk about next, but in my personal opinion, it is not as good as Droplet. It is not as beneficial, and its utility ceiling is not as high as Droplet. And that card is Forbidden Chalice. Everybody who is running couldn't afford Forbidden Droplets uses Forbidden Chalice, which is perfectly fine because Forbidden Chalice is still a very good card. I'm not trying to take anything away from the card. It's just the fact that Droplets gives you the factor to where they can't chain to it or respond to it, is the reason why it is better in that regard. But Chalice is a very budget option if you can't afford Droplets, and you still set yourself up with a very good card that can interact with your opponent trying to tell you can't play. On top of that, the attack crease sometimes comes up for your own monsters, because you can use Chalice on your own cards sometimes to get over big monsters if you need to, and you just need a little bit of push in order to get there. So, yes, Chalice is another good option if you can't afford Droplets. Moving on to the next hand trap, which kind of falls in the same category as Effect Veiler, but in my personal opinion, it is better than Effect Veiler for a couple of reasons, which we'll explain to that when we get there, which is Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence is one of those hand traps, in my personal opinion, is arguably the best two hand traps that's ever been made. Ash and Impermanence are the best two, my personal opinion. Outside, like, obviously you have Droll and stuff like that, but my personal two favorites is Impermanence and Ash. Impermanence is a very necessary card in this format, because one, it's a softer once per turn, so if you draw multiple, you can activate multiple. Two, it does not play into talents, since it's not a monster. And that's one of the big things you want to kind of play around too, because whenever you're doing anything, you want to try to play around as many interactions as possible that your opponent could have to try to counter your counters, if that makes sense. So, Impermanence doesn't play into talents. It also you can activate in multiples, and in the best part is if you have it set, it turns off the column that it is activated in. So let's say, for example, you have no room to main deck any back row hate, but you're playing against a skill drain player. You can set this card in the same column as a skill drain player, negate one of their monsters to turn off their skill drain for one turn, and you get one turn and one turn. That's it. You get one turn to try and take them out or break their board, or at least get rid of the skill drain with whatever monster effect if you had one on field or whatever. But it helps you play around floodgates and helps you play around back row along with turn off the column, and every now and then you'll get that one opponent who forgets. Myself has done it, I've done it, we've all done it, we're all Yu-Gi-Oh players, that will accidentally activate it in their cards in the same column as Impermanence, and their card will be negated even after Impermanence has resolved, which is very nutty and very good. Moving on to the next one. This next one is going to be a very pricey card, but there's my personal opinion, there is not a budgetary option for it, and that is Evenly Matched. Evenly Matched is a very good card, whether you're running a hard go second deck or you're just going to have it in a side deck that just completely kind of hard resets the board to where you enter your battle phase and you drop this card, and it banishes all of your opponent's field besides one card, because you only control one card. If you need a refreshment or you don't know what Evenly Matched says, I'll read it to you just to clarify if I didn't clarify it enough, because sometimes I do talk in circles or I don't clarify enough, if that makes sense. Well, let's go ahead and read this card together. It says, at the end of the battle phase, if your opponent controls more cards than you do, you can make your opponent banish cards from their field face down so they control the same number of cards as you do. If you control no cards, you can activate this card from hand. So, let me break this down. Let's say you draw this for turn and you're going second. Draw phase, standby, main, declare the battle phase, And then when you're about to leave battle phase, just drop evenly matched. If they have no way to negate it, they have to banish they have to banish their entire field, but one card they get to keep. And that's one interruption probably you have to deal with, if anything at all. It completely hard resets and allows you to play Yu-Gi-Oh! At the cost of your battle phase. Which I know a lot of people who are out there who are playing OTK-based decks don't like that, and I understand, because you want to just OTK and get over with. But if anything, at least you can break their board, banish most of their resources, and somewhat make a decent board, and just OTK them the following turn. Most of the time, if you activate evenly matched, depending on the deck, if they don't have like a full hand of resources, they're not going to be able to bounce back from that, at least not in one turn. Yes, there are some decks that can do that, but not very many. Moving on to the next side deck option or main deck option, depending on your deck. And that is Dimensional Barrier. Dimensional Barrier is a very good generic meta call or rogue call, if you want to call it that. It literally takes care of so many different decks in one card, which is amazing because it can allow you to play other cards in your side deck and allows you to have more room. Because if you're anything like me, you run out of room on everything, whether it be in your main deck, extra, or side, and you always want to try to keep it as tight as possible so you can have as much as generic as possible, so you get multiple bases covered with single cards, which is kind of like evenly matched. Brings me back to evenly matched. Evenly matched can be used against combo decks or control decks. Takes 2 for the price of 1. In permanents, whether it be in a main deck, which I don't know why you would side deck, in permanents, it can take care of somewhat of both. You could take care of combo decks in the same sense, taking care of turning off their backer for at least a turn. And which brings me back to Dimensional Barrier. If you don't know what the card says or you need refreshing, let me read it to you. It's a trap card, a normal trap card, which means it's searchable off Trap Trick too. So let me read it to you. Declare one monster card type: Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, XZ, or Pendulum. Okay? For the rest of this turn, neither player can special summon monsters of the declared type. Also, negate the effects of all monsters of that type while they're on the field. You can only activate one dimensional barrier per turn. So let's say you go first. You set this card. You can activate it, and if you know what you're playing against, you can declare that type, and they can't summon those monsters. And if they already had some on the field, the monsters have negated. So if you're playing against Sword Soul, you call Synchro. If you're playing against Drytron, Necros, or like Blue Eyes Chaos Max, declare Ritual. You don't have to worry about being OTK'd if you're playing against Chaos Max. Playing against Invoke Shaddolls, declare Fusion. I hate that card for this very reason. But anyways, D-Barrier is a very good card, and it's a very generic and takes care of a lot of decks that you'll probably face if you go to bigger events or if you just have a broad locals. Moving on to one of the last ones, and this one gets very situational. If you have room, you can main deck it. If you don't, you can just run it in the side like I do. And that card is Red Reboot. I added this card in there because a lot of this, Red Reboot is normally one of those cards that's like kind of like standard to have in your side deck, but I really wanted to put it in here and talk about it because this card alone has saved me so many times. I just want to give it the praise that it has. I remember before I used this card and before I ever resolved this card, I didn't understand the card and I didn't understand the utility it brought. I was very crazy and very silly and I didn't understand. But sometimes I know some cards, when you read them on paper, their utility doesn't really like click sometimes on a lot of things until you activate it in situations. Because sometimes you're like, oh yeah, that card is good. It stops traps it stops one trap. Okay, you can activate it out of hand. Yeah. But then when you get into the turn, you get into the duel, and you activate and resolve it, and you see how impactful it is, it understands why some cards could be limited, banned, or some of them are just really good, like D-Barrier, for example. But if you don't know what red reboot is or what it does, let me read it to you. When your opponent activates a trap, negate the activation, and if you do, set that card face down. Then they can set one other trap directly from their deck. For the rest of the turn after this card resolves, your opponent cannot activate trap cards. You can activate this card from your hand by paying half your life points. Okay, so let me clarify on everything that this card can do and give you situations, which is really good. Okay, so let's say you're playing against Trap Eldritch, okay, and you're forced to go second. Okay, they set their 5 back row because they don't really have nothing better to do with their lives. So they set their back row. You activate a card, you normal summon a monster, yada yada. You have this card in hand. They activate Skill Drain. You can chain this card from your hand by paying half your life points to negate it. Set it face down again. Set it face down again. Yes. Then they can set a trap card from their deck if they have the space. Which, if you're playing against Trap Eldritch, they probably won't have the space. But regardless. And then for the rest of the turn, they cannot activate traps. That means you're not going to get Sanguine to have to deal with Golden Lord. You're not going to get your stuff popped by Conch, and you're not going to have to worry about another skill drain for that turn. So it buys you time to set up your board and your negations, your interruptions, or just flat out OTK. Because at the cost of half your life points by activating it. It's also a counter trap too, so you could always set this and activate it in a counter trap. Which is really nice too to help play around other counter traps. But at the cost of half your life points, that's really freaking good. Wise man once said, you gotta spend life points to take life points. Deep poem by Pegasus. But anyways, guys, that is my list on side deck options or main deck options moving forward into this format. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If I missed any, go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below. Now, all this is not set in stone, because the format can shift in any direction, but right now, as we speak and where we sit, this is where I see us going, and the cards that myself personally, I'm going to be using to help counter the meta and counter the rogue decks, and just give myself a nice generic options to play the game and counter the opponent. But again, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you took something from it, and just overall, like I said, enjoy the video. But with that being said, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful day, night, morning, evening, whenever you're watching this video. I hope you all are staying safe out there in the age of COVID, because you know I'm not. I caught this shit twice. But check out the description if you want to become closer to the DD fam and the Discord, and the merch down in the description down there below too. Stay safe, and your boy Drip will see y'all next time. Drip out. Peace.